Probably the most controversial thing Brawl Stars has done since the removal of masteries, buffies are certainly an interesting topic. Were they necessary in reviving the game and keeping people interested in Brawl Stars? Or did they make a game already struggling to balance 100 brawlers, along with their unlockables, even more of a nightmare to balance, while also making the game more pay to win? Well, in this video, we'll take a look at buffies through three main lenses: balancing, skill, and resources, and discover how bad or good buffies truly were for the game, and then discuss how they could be handled better. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to keep up with my videos. Second, join our Discord server. We have some fun stuff to do there, like our very own 1v1 rank Go Gauntlet. Third, consider becoming a channel member if you're interested in supporting the channel and have ample disposable income for some cool perks, like watching videos early or getting to decide on the future video ideas. Finally, if you like the music in the video, it's actually all made by me, so check out my second channel for some more music. Am I late to the party? Maybe. But I feel like giving buffies a few months to settle in is the right way to go about this, so we can make fair judgments rather than making knee-jerk reactions after just a few days of buffies being released. With that being said, let's first talk about buffies and what they've done to balancing. First of all, let's talk about the impact that buffies have to the entire landscape of Brawl Stars balancing. We saw a problem with hypercharges earlier when they were still being released. Brawl Stars team only dropped 6 in update, but with buffies, it's now an insane 18 that have to be designed and balanced every single update. This is a lot, especially considering they only have 60 days to do it before they have to drop the next update. This has a twofold impact. First of all, it leads to worse design and balancing. With less time to actually properly design and playtest each buffy, it means buffies will be more rushed, and therefore, worse. Secondly, it leads to less time for Brawl Stars to do other stuff. With so much of their time being forced on pumping out buffies, less time is being spent on doing other stuff, like balancing other parts of the game, coming up with new ideas for in other areas of the game, and overall game improvement. At this point, we've established that the ways buffies are being handled right now is quite flawed. There's simply too much content for the devs to make, yet for us players it feels like it's not enough. Why? Well, coming back to the hypercharges, one of the biggest criticisms was that there were only 6 hypercharges dropping every update. This meant that with each update, the brawlers with 6 hypercharges would almost be guaranteed A or S tier brawlers, while the last patch would get nerfed to oblivion or stay menaces, leading to a vicious cycle of brawlers being menaces for a month or two, and then going back to obscurity, or keeping on being menaces. Furthermore, this will be going on for years, roughly 4 years to be exact, as that's when every single brawler will have their buffies. No one liked this happening with hypercharges, and nobody wanted to see this repeated. Yet that's exactly what's going on with buffies. Once again, 6 brawlers on update are getting them, and once again, the 6 brawlers that get them turn into absolute machines, with the exception of Nita for some reason. And that leads me to my next point, the actual buffies themselves. To say they're strong is almost an understatement. Unlike something like a hypercharge, they aren't even a core part of a brawler's kit. They're simply an addition to a brawler's unlockables. Yet, they literally have the same, if not more of an impact on brawlers than hypercharges did. Let's take Ems for example. Before her buffies, she was steeped in mediocrity, being near the bottom of the D tier. Yes, the D tier. After her buffies were released, not even S tier, literally the best brawler in the game. Her buffies completely changed her in a way that shouldn't be possible for unlockable buffs, though to be fair they did rework some of her unlockables as well. And this takes me to a devil's advocate position. Buffies help modernize brawlers that are suffering from power creep. Ems is a perfect example of this. The rise of the aggro meta and overall power creep has caused her to slide through the meta slowly for years, leading her to be a forgotten and outdated brawler. Buffies turned a brawler that there was literally no reason to play to one of the most popular brawlers and most powerful brawlers in the game. Furthermore, buffies give important reworks to gadgets and star powers that are often outdated, allowing them to combat power creep. However, all of this does come at the cost of, well, being broken for the most part. And often, what we're seeing is an over-reliance on unlockables. These brawlers with buffies need their unlockables, and buffies to stay relevant in the meta. The moment they either get nerfed, or more brawlers get them, they'll start becoming irrelevant again. Once again, we've seen this exact same thing with hypercharges, and it really does seem Brawl Stars is not learning from their mistakes. Overall, buffies are making the same mistakes as hypercharges, with the whole cyclical process of being broken, then nerfed, and then new ones taking their place looking to be the norm for buffies. Furthermore, they're creating an over-reliance on the buffies, while neglecting a lot of the actual issues with the brawlers, creating a situation where, a year or so from now, these same brawlers are going to be mid again. But now, let's go to our second lens, skill expression. This was one of the main arguments for buffies from Supercell, that they would increase overall skill expression. And well, this is kind of false. These buffies aren't exactly something that makes brawlers have more skill to play, nor is it really something that increases the skill cap of these brawlers. These are simply straight buffs to brawlers, not something nuanced that makes them more skillful. Look at Mortis for example. He used to be one of the most difficult and skillful brawlers in the game. There's no coincidence that he's one of the poster childs of bad randoms everywhere. It wasn't easy to play him properly. It took real skill to secure kills, and it was extremely difficult to actually team wipe. Finally, there were big costs associated with misusing Mortis' ammo, not understanding his matchups, and not being acutely game aware at all times. However, this all really changed with his buffies, though, to be fair, the process already began with his hypercharge. His combo spinner gadget dealt way too much damage for just the click of a green button, basically allowing extra damage for no extra effort. Add in his other buffies, and you get a brawler that has so much more cushion and overall ease of play than what used to be the case. Not exactly the increase of skill expression that was promised, is it? Basically every brawler suffers from this, another example being Ems. This is a brawler that used to struggle heavily against aggro brawlers. Now, she literally counters them, and basically every brawler in the game. Her buffies were so strong, they removed one of her main weaknesses. Since when was removing a weakness an increase in the amount of skill it took to play a brawler? Furthermore, the introduction of buffies has simply increased the incentive for the hypercharge and gadget spam we've been seeing a lot recently, continually making the game much more unlockable based rather than brawler based. Finally, the amount of buffies able to be equipped for each brawler. This could have been really interesting. Imagine having to select one buffy for each game based on the situation. It would make the game a lot more skillful and incentivize actual thinking. Maybe one buffy is really good in a matchup, but another buffy is also good on the map you're playing on. Having to choose between them actually gives the player a difficult decision to make, especially since you have to choose between 3 buffies, unlike the regular 2 of star powers and gadgets. Furthermore, you would also have to take into account which buffies your enemies may have, allowing for a new layer of predicting skill that already comes with the draft, in predicting what gadget or star power your enemy goes. There are, of course, reasons they don't do it. It puts buffies into a spot where a lot of gadgets and star powers are currently, with one of them being used mainly and the other being neglected. Furthermore, it also incentivizes less buffies being bought, as many people might just buy 1 or 2, and forego buying a particularly bad or useless buffy. However, the main root of this problem comes from the balancing of the buffy. And who's to blame for the balancing of the buffy? You know who. So, at the end of the day, the only thing stopping this from being a reality is the competency of the buffies balancing in comparison with each other. Overall, rather than the increase in skill expression that Brawl Stars promised us with the release of buffies, it's seeming more like an increase in unlockable spam and reliance, and even an overall decrease in the amount of skill it requires to play these buffied brawlers. Finally, let's talk about the final of the 3 lenses, the resources needed for buffies. This probably is not going to be as long as the other 2, but probably still the most egregious of the 3. Let's get straight to the point. Buffies cost a lot, especially for free-to-play players. They cost 2,000 power points and 1,000 coins each. and you need 3 per brawler. For 100 brawlers to be fully buffied, you need, and get ready for this, 600,000 power points and 300,000 coins. You're not hearing that wrong. It will genuinely take that many resources to max out every buffy, not even considering power-up costs, hypercharge costs, gadget costs, star power costs, and gear costs. To say this is a slap in the face to a lot of players would be an understatement. New players were genuinely fried in this update, and Brawl Stars knew it. I think we can all agree that it used to be quite feasible to max out your account as a free-to-play player after playing for a few years religiously. Now, Brawl Stars themselves have made it clear they don't want free-to-play players to get it maxed out anymore. This is a complete 180 from the Brawl Stars we knew and love, a game that used to be very free-to-play friendly. So we can establish buffies were made more for veteran players and pay-to-win players, not casuals. Yet they kinda screwed over veteran and pay-to-win players as well. But how? Well, let's get back to the cost. The cost of 2,000 power points and 1,000 coins actually screws over veteran and formerly maxed out players, more than new players. And I'm speaking from experience. The sheer amount of power points you get is just so much lower the higher up you go. The amount of power points you're getting from star drops and stuff is just so much less than coins. I mean, you get 200 power points from a mythic drop, but 500 coins. And you don't even get any power points from legendaries. Nowadays, Brawl Stars are making an effort to treat them both equally, with gem equivalents for both being the same. So why the discrepancy in star drops? Furthermore, the amount of coins you get is increased even further when you take into consideration fallback rewards, as you don't get any PowerPoint fallback rewards, but you can get lots of coin fallback rewards if you're maxed. I'll use myself as an example. I currently have a modest 75,000 coins, and an extremely modest 0 power points. Yes, that's a 75,000 difference in my resources. This is genuinely egregious and basically perfectly represents everything wrong with buffies. And to make matters even worse, buffies are completely random, so you're spending this exorbitant amount of coins and power points for a buffy that might be completely useless for you. And if you want to buy a specific buffy, well, be prepared to fork over an utterly diabolical 199 gems. This isn't even funny anymore. Overall, when it comes to cost, it was completely mishandled by Brawl Stars. They've created an even more pay-to-win environment, while also screwing over pay-to-win players in the process. They made a situation where basically only pay-to-win players are actually able to get the majority of the buffies, yet made the resource costs especially difficult for pay-to-win players to obtain. Overall, nobody ended up winning in this situation, neither free-to-plays nor pay-to-win players, though we do know a certain group that did win. So I think I've established a very anti-Buffy stance in this video. And to be fair, it's not without reason. They've made the game much more pay-to-win, skill-less, and unbalanced. However, to be fair, they've brought interest into Brawl Stars in a time where it was lacking, brought much needed updates to brawlers who have been power creeped, and shaken up gameplay majorly for the first time in a long time, as well as getting a lot more revenue for themselves. Overall though, yes, the negatives do outweigh the positives, but maybe this can be fixed. How? Well, in terms of balancing, this can always be fixed. Just simply change how you're approaching buffies. Make them more of an addition to an unlockable, rather than an essential part of a brawler to make them viable in the meta. Second, the release situation. This isn't easy to fix. If you speed up the process so the overall time brawlers won't have buffies is less, then you run the risk of overworking and therefore rushing brawler buffies, making them more unbalanced than they currently are. On the other hand, you can slow down buffy releases, allowing more time to actually develop them, making them more balanced. However, this means it'll take even longer for every brawler to get buffies, leading to an even more uneven meta for even longer. So what's the solution? Well, I have none. The solution would be to drop them all at once after years of development, testing, and teasing, so each buffy would have time to be perfectly designed, the public would have been aware for them for months or even years, and creators would hopefully have access to them for a while to give feedback. This would create much more hype for them when they actually drop as well, as people would have been eagerly waiting for them for a while, just like they are for a real club rework, which we probably will never see at this point. But at the end of the day, if I'm Brawl Stars, unfortunately, the only thing I can do is continue with the 6 per month. In terms of skill, this is much more difficult. How exactly do you add to the skill expression of brawlers with just a buff to an unlockable? Well, one area is of course making it so only one buffie is equipped. But of course, the problem lies within the buffies themselves. Brawl Stars has to figure out a way they can increase the skill cap of a brawler, rather than making the brawler both rely on the buffie and easier to play. And this unfortunately isn't an easy task. So far, I've been pretty useless when it comes to providing solutions. These aren't easy problems to solve, and at this point, we have to wonder if they can even be solved at all. If you do have solutions to these problems, then make sure to put them down in the comments. But now let's talk about the resource situation. Obviously, the biggest problem comes with the price. In a perfect world, we slash both prices in half to get 1000 power points and 500 coins. But we're not in a perfect world, so let's assume that we can't shift the price amount. However, I have a solution. What Brawl Stars can do is allow you to pay either 1000 coins and 2000 power points, or 1000 power points and 2000 coins, which would be ideal for people who are on both sides of the spectrum, and allow for a better balancing between coins and power points, lowering the insane ratios such as mine. What would be even better than this though would be a sort of sliding feature similar to what I believe Lex suggested a while back. This would mean you can pay however many power points and coins you want as long as it adds up to 3000. This would be even more ideal than the last suggestion, though of course, more unlikely. Next, I want to talk about a potential solution to the gemcast and the RNG problem. Once again, it's very unlikely they'll get rid of the RNG associated with buffies, so this would be an alternative. What I'm proposing is that every day, 3 random buffies will rotate in the shop, and these buffies would cost 99 gems. You'll know that the shop is losing its value, so this would serve to make more people likely to check the shop, which means they could also be more likely to find other offers they like. Furthermore, let's be honest, other than rich people, who's buying the 199 gem offers? Overall, I see many more people using up their gems with this new system than the current one. Finally, it also helps reduce the RNG of buffies, as you can get the buffie you want guaranteed if you just wait a couple of days. However, do I believe this will be added? No way. It's way too generous, and the main problem probably lies in the fact that the overall RNG is reduced for buffies, which will cause fewer people to actually buy buffies with coins and power points, which I'm sure they don't want. Anyway, let me know your suggestions for resource reworks for buffies in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching. Watch this video, or this playlist, or join the Discord server.